Welcome back to our news bulletin. Pakistan says India is using terrorism as a state policy to destabilize neighboring countries. In a statement, the Foreign Office said a recent UN report had endorsed Pakistan's stance that TTP is operating from Afghanistan with Indian support. It also rejected Indian allegations about the UN report, saying there were militant safe havens in Pakistan. The Foreign Office said there was no reference to safe havens in Pakistan in the report. It termed these accusations an attempt to slander Pakistan and mislead the international community. In China, a knife-wielding attacker has wounded 37 students and 2 adults at a primary school in southern Guangxi region. Local officials said the alleged attacker was identified as a security guard who worked at the school. A student, the school principal, and another security guard were reported to be seriously injured. Police have arrested the assailant while his motive is yet to be determined. A number of schools in China have been hit by attacks in recent years, forcing authorities to step up security. Beijing says it will allow more foreign carriers to fly into the mainland shortly after Washington banned Chinese passenger flights to the U.S. The Civil Aviation Administration says foreign carriers will be allowed 1 per week flights to a certain city starting from June 8th. A 5-for-1 policy allows mainland carriers to fly just 1 flight a week to any country and foreign airlines to operate just 1 flight a week to China. Earlier, the U.S. Department of Transportation said it will punish Beijing for not allowing U.S. airlines to resume flights to China. But the department said it will reconsider its order against Chinese airlines if the CAAC adjusts its policies. The CAAC has slashed international flights since late March to allay concerns over rising number of imported coronavirus infections. Meanwhile, Pakistan has surpassed China in COVID-19 cases after 4,688 more people tested positive. This is the country's highest single-day surge. 82 people have lost their lives over the past 24 hours, taking the death toll to 1,770. The country now stands in the 6th place worldwide with 53,366 active infections. The Health Ministry said 30,128 patients have recovered so far. Sindh province leads in the number of cases with 32,910 infections. Punjab follows close behind with 31,104 cases reported. There are 11,373 cases in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and 5,224 in Balochistan. 3,544 have been infected in the capital Islamabad and 1,109 in AJK and Gilgit-Baltistan. The daily coronavirus death toll has soared to a new high in Brazil with 1,349 fatalities, taking the tally to over 32,000. Mexico also reported a record 1,092 deaths in the past 24 hours, with the death toll over 11,000. Meanwhile, in the U.S., the number of deaths has surpassed 107,000, with over 1.85 million infected. Worldwide, the death count has crossed 385,000, with more than 6.4 million infections. Further details in this report.
More than 100,000 new COVID-19 cases have been reported globally each day for the last 5 days. The UN says America has remained the hardest hit region. Brazil has registered record daily deaths for a second consecutive day, but city and state authorities are moving aggressively to open commerce back up. President Jair Bolsonaro has also criticized the lockdowns in effect in parts of Brazil.
What's going on in Brazil right now with those measures that are being taken? The poor are becoming miserable and the middle class are becoming poor. Everyone in Brazil is becoming the same. And it seems that they have no idea when this is going to end. The Supreme Court delegated the decisions to mayors and governors.
In Europe, Turkey says it will lift its weekend stay-at-home orders after nearly 2 months. But Spain's lawmakers have voted to extend the state of emergency a final time through to June 21st. Britain has outlined new quarantine measures for international travels.
To limit the spread of infection, arrivals must self-isolate for 14 days. This is the incubation period of coronavirus. and this follows expert medical advice and is in line with the NHS Test and Trace Service self-isolation period for anyone who has been in contact with the disease.
Meanwhile, New Zealand is on the verge of eradicating the virus from its shores after it notched a 13th straight day with no new infections. The country has already lifted many of its virus restrictions and can remove most of those that remain, including limited crowd sizes, next week.
Libya's internationally recognized government says it has gained full control over the capital, Tripoli. The announcement comes after a year-long siege by forces of Eastern Commander Khalifa Haftar. Libyan Army spokesperson Colonel Tayyar Mohammed Kanunu said the forces are now chasing and expelling LNA troops from the region. The government took control of the Tripoli International Airport from Haftar's forces earlier today. In a televised address, Libyan Prime Minister Fayez al-Sarraj called on members of Haftar's militias to surrender. Yesterday, the UN announced that the country's warring sides have agreed to resume ceasefire talks. In protests against George Floyd's killing in the U.S., police shot a man during a confrontation in which one officer was stabbed in the neck and two others sustained gunshot wounds. New York Police Department says the officers did not sustain any life-threatening injuries. Thousands continue to rally in Boston, Denver, Portland, and Auckland and New York as they face off with the National Guard. More than 10,000 people have been arrested in protests across the U.S. so far. Former Defense Secretary James Mattis has rebuked U.S. President Donald Trump's militarized response, saying it divides Americans.
We have a very powerful National Guard, over 300,000 men and women, and we can do pretty much whatever we want as far as that. But as far as going beyond that, sure, if it was necessary. We have Antifa, we have anarchists, we have terrorists, we have looters. We have a lot of bad people in those groups.
Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei says the killing of George Floyd in police custody has exposed the true nature of the rulers of the U.S. In a televised speech, Khamenei said the crime committed against this black man is the same thing Washington has been doing against the entire world. He said in dealing with its own people, the American government has behaved in the worst manner. Khamenei said that people of the U.S. have every right to feel embarrassed by their governments, particularly the current one. Iran's Supreme Leader's speech comes at a time of heightened tensions between Tehran and Washington. The UK says China's actions in Hong Kong have risked the political freedoms enshrined in the Sino-British Agreement. At a news conference, Prime Minister Boris Johnson said the Sino-British Agreement of 1987 protects political and civic freedoms in Hong Kong. He said the agreement is badly eroded following China's actions. Johnson said China's actions are a breach of the SINO-UK Pact made in 1997. The Premier also said he saw no contradiction between London's views on Hong Kong and Chinese telecom group Huawei. Earlier, China accused Britain of gross interference in the country's affairs after Johnson offered millions of Hong Kong residents the UK citizenship. Moscow has confirmed the delivery of more Russian-made MiG-29 fighter jets to Syria. The Russian embassy in Syria says locals have already started using those planes for missions. It said the aircraft have been deployed at various airfields across the Arab Republic. The embassy said this is the second batch of MiG-29 sent to Syria within the framework of bilateral defense cooperation. The handover ceremony took place at Russia's Himamium Air Base. This comes days after the U.S. military accused Moscow of using Syria to transfer warplanes to Libya. Turkish and Russian troops have conducted 15th joint patrol in Syria's northwestern province of Idlib. The patrol is being conducted in line with the Moscow agreement. In a statement, Turkish Defense Ministry said the joint patrol was carried out by air and land vehicles. The patrol covered the M4 highway, which connects the cities of Aleppo and Latakia. According to the agreement, all warring parties must cease military actions along the line of contact in the Idlib de-escalation zone. Idlib has long been under siege by Assad regime forces and its allies. We're now taking a short break, but stay tuned for more news. Welcome back. Palestine has refused to receive tax revenues collected on its behalf by Israel for May. In a tweet, head of the Palestinian Authority's Civil Affairs, Hussein al-Sheikh, said the rejection implements the decision to terminate agreements with Israel. The tax revenues are collected by the Israeli government on behalf of Palestine on its imports and exports. The tax revenues are estimated at $200 million each month, while Israel deducts $40 million for services. On May 20th, Palestine's President Mahmoud Abbas announced the termination of all agreements signed with Israel and the U.S. The decision was in response to Israel's proposed annexation plan for parts of the West Bank. The U.S. National Security Council says Yemen's Houthi rebels are attacking Saudi Arabia with unmanned drones provided by Iran. In a tweet, the council said while Riyadh is hosting a donors conference to help the Yemeni people, the rebels continue obstructing the delivery of aid. It urged the Houthis to work towards a peaceful solution to end the conflict in Yemen. The comments come a day after Saudi Arabia hosted a donor conference for Yemen in partnership with the UN, where the kingdom pledged an aid package worth $500 million. Around $1.35 billion of aid for Yemen were pledged at the conference by 30 countries. On Monday, the Arab coalition downed 2 drones that were launched towards Saudi Arabia by the Houthi militia. 16 people, including women and children, have been killed by militias in an attack in northeastern Democratic Republic of Congo. Local media says the raid took place in Musa village of the Ituri province. Notorious ethnic militia, the Cooperative for the Development of Congo, is being blamed for the attack. The UN says at least 700 civilians have lost their lives in ongoing fighting in Ituri since 2017. The army previously announced that Codeco leader Justin Ngondolo was killed in late March. It launched an offensive in January against militias operating in Ituri as part of a wider offensive. In the Philippines, a UN report has found that tens of thousands of people may have been killed in the war on drugs since mid-2016. The report said the crackdown has been marked by police orders and high-level rhetoric that may have been interpreted as permission to kill. It said there has been near impunity for such violations despite credible allegations and systematic extrajudicial killings in the war on drugs. According to the report, there has been only one conviction for the murder of a 17-year-old Manila student in 2017. However, police say their actions have been unlawful. At least 4 people have been killed and several wounded as a Category 4 tropical cyclone Nisarga pounded India's western coast. While the densely populated city of Mumbai narrowly escaped the eye of the storm, it played havoc along the coastal areas to the south. Strong and gusty winds uprooted trees in some parts of the city, but there was no large-scale damage. Nisarga is the second tropical cyclone to hit India in less than 2 weeks. Earlier, Cyclone Amphan made a thumping landfall in eastern India on 20th May. Sweden's health chief says the country should have done more to combat the coronavirus. The epidemiologist was responsible for a national strategy that avoided the strict lockdown seen in many other countries. Anders Tegnell's comments followed mounting criticism of Stockholm's handling of the crisis. But with 443 deaths per million people, it has the 8th highest number of coronavirus-related deaths per capita in the world. Earlier, Prime Minister Stefan Löfven had promised an inquiry into the country's handling of the pandemic. The anti-malaria drug hydroxychloroquine has proven not to be effective in preventing coronavirus. Researchers at the University of Minnesota enrolled 821 adults from the US and Canada who had come into contact with COVID-19 patients. All the participants were randomly assigned to receive either hydroxychloroquine or a vitamin placebo for 5 days. The results found 11.83% given the medicine contracted the illness as compared to 14.25% on the placebo. That difference was not statistically significant, meaning the drug was no better than the placebo. But 40% of those who took hydroxychloroquine reported less serious side effects versus 17% in the placebo group. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization says it will resume trials of the anti-malaria drug until a definite vaccine is found.
Now there's no evidence that any drug actually reduces the mortality in patients who have COVID-19, and in fact it's an urgent priority for all of us to do the needed studies, to do the randomized clinical trials in order to get that evidence as quickly as possible.
Millions of children can die from preventable diseases because of disruptions to vaccination programs due to COVID-19. Experts from the United Nations Children's Fund, Sabine Vaccine Institute and Gavi say thousands of children will die needlessly every day. UNICEF Executive Director Henrietta said all gains against preventable diseases can be wiped away. WHO Immunization Department Head Kate O'Brien said resurgence of avoidable illnesses is going to result in unprecedented deaths. Vaccine programs were disrupted after the WHO advised countries to suspend vaccinations to help slow the spread of the virus. The warnings come as global leaders meet virtually for Global Vaccine Summit today, which will be hosted by UK this year. Donor organizations will seek about $7.5 billion to ensure Vaccine Alliance Gavi can continue delivering life-saving drugs. We're now taking a short break, but stay tuned for more news. Germany has unveiled a $146 billion stimulus package to kickstart its economy severely hit by COVID-19. Chancellor Angela Merkel says out of the total package, over $134.5 billion will be borne by the federal government. Merkel said Berlin's package will deal with the responsibility towards Europe and the international dimension. Merkel said it will give the economy a push to secure jobs. The package suspends value-added tax and pledges some $336 per child to families. The government has also doubled rebate to about $6,730 for those who purchase electric cars. The fresh stimulus comes on top of a massive over $1 trillion rescue package already agreed in March. European stock markets have lost steam as investors speculate over the outlook for global economy as countries ease lockdown. Frankfurt's DAX has lost over 0.5%. CAC 40 in Paris is trading fractionally lower, while London's FTSE 100 is trading marginally lower. In Asia, Nikkei 225 edged higher. Seoul's Kospi and Hong Kong's Hang Seng gained a fraction. Shanghai Composite lost marginally. Meanwhile, international benchmark Brent crude oil is trading over 1% lower after touching $40 a barrel yesterday. Now let's look at the weather from around the globe. This is all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.News.